Let's jump into the first story, and I guess unless you've been living under a rock this week, you probably have heard about the Office of Personnel Management breach that occurred. And kind of break this down for you a little bit in a nutshell, but the long and short is about 4 million current and former government workers, their personal information, we don't really know what types of information, but they're saying some personal identifying information, social security numbers were stolen. The breach was detected around the April timeframe, but it looks like the attacker was probably in there as far back as late 2014 somewhere. FBI is working to investigate like they always would. Eyesight Partners actually put out a little blurb that they think they may believe that this is linked to the Anthem, or the same actor set may be related to the Anthem and Premera healthcare breaches that occurred, and we've talked about them on the show, I'm sure, at some point in the past. If that's the case, a lot of signs are pointing this direction that it's probably a China nation state type of thing going on here. So we've discussed this kind of stuff before on the show a lot, mostly with respect to the private sector and government agencies, defense industrial base. They get targeted by these nation state actors who are trying to break into their networks, steal their intellectual property or other strategic intelligence that they can use to use in some other way, however that might be. I guess the couple of things I was going to mention, and I think we always say this around this type of stuff, is you're never going to be able to stop all of these attacks. So the best thing you can do is try to be able to detect them as best as possible. And the industry is getting smarter about this. I think we're doing a good job in general, but still a lot of stuff gets through. Unless it's a well-known toolkit that somebody's using, these actors are pretty crafty in terms of making their activity that they use for their remote access toolkits to be to kind of blend in with the background noise of your network traffic. Having a good user education program, right? We always talk about that. We have a really good one here at AT&T in terms of letting our general user population be really aware of the dangers of clicking on, spear-phished emails or any kind of other types of activities like rogue USB thumb drives just left around, maybe in a parking lot or wherever. You don't want to just grab those and stick them into your computer. They could be Trojanized. And then the other thing I was going to say, and I'll let you guys chime in here, with respect to OPM specifically, this attacker might try to parlay all this information that they got here about the 4 million or so former government workers identifying information, use that to then spearfish them, maybe spearfish in such a way that it looks like let's say we were on the list there, I get an email from Matt to me saying, hey, check out this link about some security thing I found. So they'll do spearfishes like that, where they try to make it look like it came from somebody in order to lure you into a false sense of security. So that's a possibility that they need to be aware of. I don't know. That's what I wanted to kind of mention about that. I didn't know if anybody else had any other insights or thoughts about this particular breach.
If it was social security numbers and that kind of stuff that's out there, if it does get out into the hands of criminals, then it's the same old thing that they seem to do after data breaches everywhere else. They tell you, watch your credit report and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It may be worthwhile actually taking the next step and putting a lock on your credit, where basically you can't open any new accounts in your name or anything without going through some additional hoops. There are some folks I know out there who have just decided that's their standard default setting now because of all these breaches over the last 5, 6, 7 years, that they're just going to leave their credit locked. It makes it harder to open new credit card accounts and that kind of thing, but it also prevents the bad guys from opening new accounts in your name. So just something to toss out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I keep thinking OPM has access to this information about who does and doesn't have a clearance now, and a target list of, I'm not going to say 4 million people in the U.S. have clearances, but it's still a sizable number of people in that database who might be subject to further targeting simply because they're privy to extra information. So it might not be that we have people trying to profit monetarily off of it, but there may be some sort of intelligence gathering, value to that data, if it truly is a state, a nation state behind all this.
Right, and I've heard some discussion, on some of the news stations and whatnot, saying, well, they might actually be trying to assess these 4 million plus users that have clearances, or however many it is, to kind of figure out, well, what makes a good candidate for clearances, so that they can kind of, if they want to get people into, a U.S. security clearance program, then they know what would be, make it a smoother path, so to speak, let's say. That's all speculation, but I have heard that, so that's what some of the people in intelligence are worried about, in terms of, somebody like a nation state trying to put their own agents inside the U.S. government with clearances, and trying to figure out, okay, well, can we use this information to figure out what would either rule them out or make them more likely to get their clearance go through. So, interesting.
Data set apparently goes back to sometime in 1985, I think, was reported.
Oh, the data set of what was actually stolen.
Yep.
Right. Okay, that's a pretty long period of time, right? Mm-hmm. So interesting. Anyway, one to keep an eye out for. It's, just like a lot of these other ones, there's a lot of these breaches that occur, and that's kind of our job, is to try to help defend and prevent that kind of thing from happening. Not that we're ever always going to be always successful, but in general, that's what everybody needs to do.